So, of course, my co-presenter's not here, and he's got the first slides, and he hasn't told me what they're about. He said, oh, I'm going to surprise you. Yeah, well, surprises come in lots of forms. But I am going to share a little bit about my own bias. So just to get us rolling, how bias can catch you off guard and how it can be so hidden you don't really even know it's there. Years ago, in a previous life, I was a property manager, and I screened people. I came in, put in their applications, I ran their credit, made sure that they were worthy of renting in our complex. And this young man comes in, he's wearing a shirt with a collar all buttoned up and long sleeves and dress pants. And I thought, okay. His credit was very marginal, but his dad was co-signing, so I said, we'll give him a chance. A couple weeks later, after he's moved in, thank you for joining us. Here, do join me. You got to turn it on, I think. And so a couple weeks later, after he'd moved in, I see him by the laundromat, which is right by the office. And he's got tattoos up and down his arms. Now, this was close to it was close to at least 30 years ago. I told you it was a prior life. So my first thought was, if I had seen those tats, he never would have. And I went, oh my God, what am I thinking? How could that make a difference? He qualified, he's a good renter, he's paying on time. And I realized I had this bias that I didn't even know I had. Now everybody and your grandma's got a tattoo. But back then it was bikers, ex-cons, and Navy men, right? That's it. Nobody had a tattoo. And so that was when I first realized how they can catch you off guard and you don't even know it's lurking in the shadows. So I am biased. I can conceive that. But I am trying not to be by noticing my biases.
Me too. I'm biased as well. So let's get...
Actually, you're Bruce Parker, and you belong here.
I had to introduce myself.
Did you? Here, take this one. I'll try to get that one to work.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Bruce Parker. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm biased too, and I'm trying not to be. And Andrea's revealed her bias, and I'll go through as we go through the next hour or so together and my biases. But Andrea, if you wouldn't mind skipping to, I just wanted to give a little introduction here to myself. You know what these are. They're pill bottles, vegetables in cans, and chip bags. Next one.
Next, okay.
Yep, please. You'll find as you go through life, and I'm starting to age potentially as I get older, I'm realizing I need some things in the kitchen that were not typically needed before. So the wrench has become an indispensable part of kitchen utensils.
Okay, the jars.
We need them to get the top off jars and bottles from the pharmacy now. Have you tried to open this stuff? Have you tried to open a Gatorade bottle recently? There's about 20 little clips around the outside. Are you nodding your head in agreement? It's hard to get into this stuff. There's a joke in my home that as we get older, my wife and I will starve to death with a house full of food. We can't get into it. And the scissors are there for opening chip bags now because I can't pull them apart any longer. I've got to cut the top off them. So it's sort of a fun time to be, and I wanted to share that with you. Next one, please. So the introduction to bias, and Andrea sort of started that down that road, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, and then what happens, and then increasing it and being aware, simply aware of our bias in planning. And how that is something that APA and we as Utah APA work against, please. So, I don't know you and you don't know me. I have some associations with many people in this room. There's one here in the front row, Dave's over there. I can see Mr. Hanson back there and a few others. I know Brian is here. I know the Dean a little bit. Thank you for being here. And others in this room. But we know one another as associates, but we really don't know one another, right? We don't know one another. Do you know that I'm an immigrant? We're having a lot of discussion in this country right now about immigration. I'm an immigrant. I arrived, a few years ago now with 2 pieces of luggage, and I think I had $500. That was it. Thanks to my wife, who supported me a little bit along the way, I was able to become a little bit successful, but not much. But I'm an immigrant. I grew up on a little sheep farm. Sheep are my favorite animals. I love those things. They are so cute. People say they're dumb. No, they're not. I don't believe that. I think they're the most smartest, wonderful thing in the world if you give them a chance. So I developed my own little sheep stud for a while. I have one brother. I had the best life anyone could have ever had. And like everyone else in this room, I think I'm privileged, quite frankly. Opportunities, everyone says they had great parents. I did have great parents. And they were a great example to me. Had a lot of opportunities. I feel sorry for children now, quite frankly. I would jump on my bike when I was about 8 or 9 or 10. My mother would say to me, "Where are you going?" My response was, "I don't know. I will just be back by 6 o'clock." And come back. And so when I had my first bike, it was like freedom. I was able to go anywhere. And we've lost that. We had fields that I could go to and carry on and play around, and train tracks we put coins on and see how flat they get, and all those things. So, we really don't know one another. So,
Bruce,
yes.
do you remember last night? I'm sure you do. It hasn't been that long.
Go ahead.
Last night, we were sitting having our dinner. Well, we were
preparing our conference session.
We were preparing for this. And there's a guy sitting there from Texas, and he says, I've been here in Logan, and I don't see any blacks or Hispanics. He said, I'm from Texas. I see them, I'm down from the border region, and I see Hispanics all the time. And I said,
You did?
And he said, what? You're Hispanic? And I said, yes. My mother was born and raised in Mexico City. Now, what I didn't tell him is that my father's from the Ukraine. His family, he was born here.
Yeah.
He didn't know me just by looking at me, but he made some assumptions. And I know I'm what they call a passer.
Right.
So,
but so we
fly under the radar.
How do we get to know one another and we just make these assumptions about things, I think. I had the best primary, I had primary school. What do we have here? Elementary school, right?
Yeah.
So grades 5th and 6th. I went to my 6th grade teacher, and I wasn't really too excited about her. She said, well, if you really do well and behave and all that sort of thing in class, you'll be able to go and go out later today and have recreation, and we called it physical education. Well, the school day went from 9 till 3:30. By the way, that's why I can't get up early in the morning. Like a lot of people here, because you went started school at 7. I can't believe it, how you did that. That is not right. That is not right. So from 9 till 3:30. But at 3:25, we still haven't gone outside. And I thought, what? She's stringing us along. So I got kicked out of the class. I did. And she said, you go down and talk to the school principal. So I went down and talked to the school principal. He said, go back to your classroom, get all your books, come down here. This will be your classroom. He had a little office next to his office. and it was the best experience I ever had.
She thought she was punishing you, right?
She did.
Yeah.
The principal of the school was the name of Mr. Sessfield. And he said, here's your work for the day, Bruce. Go and check this out and do this work. But I was his little errand boy. I'll take a message to Mr. So-and-so's class or Miss So-and-so or something. Absolutely loved it. I thought I was like the deputy principal. It was so fun. But you don't know me. And we all have these different stories, right? We all have these different lived experiences. And how do we get to know one another much better?
Right.
How do we do that?
How
You know,
do we do that?
I think we give a lot of latitude to one another, Andrea.
Well, we tend to make assumptions. We have scenarios. We have stories. I'm a people watcher, and it happens where you kind of go, oh, you create these little narratives about the people you see. You're in that airport. You're just waiting somewhere, and but they're all based on assumptions. They're based on what we see, not what we know. And they take us to a default setting. And these are all terms that we'll talk about in more depth. But that is the challenge, is how do we know? We wouldn't have sat next to this guy for any reason other than that they sat us there at this. It was pretty crowded. We sat at this bar, and we had our meal there.
For everyone in Salt Lake, it's a wonderful time, early part of August, to be in Salt Lake, especially hanging around a gas station. Because you will see everyone on a motorbike with, you mentioned tattoos and things, up and down. They're on their way to Sturgis from Los Angeles or Las Vegas.
Yeah.
If you walk up to some of those guys and start to have a chat, they're some of the nicest people in the world. Where are you going? Oh, I'm going up to Sturgis. Have you been up there before? Yeah, we went before, but we didn't stay long enough. And where are you going after that? Oh, we're doing a circle down around the Midwest, and we're going to make our way back to LA or Las Vegas. We're going to be gone for 10 days. Oh, that sounds fun. You got to meet anyone up there? Oh, we're going to have a meeting with a few folks, but we're going to behave ourselves. We're not the riffraff of Sturgis. We're really well behaved. And so these guys were really nice to chat to. My wife says to me, "What are you doing? Be careful." I love talking to these people. You get to know them that way, right? But just simply having a communication with people I typically wouldn't engage with, it's wonderful. And I feel like I get such an enlivened, enriched life by just chatting to other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've chatted with Michael here a few times. Every time we have an interaction, I feel like I learn something, right? We grow from just experiencing interpersonal connections with one another.
Right.
Alyssa's right here. She is one of the examples of planning in this state, I believe. She is wonderful. And we've had some interactions, and every time we have, I feel like I come away a better person. I just do.
You might be wondering, what does this have to do with planning? What does this have to do with me? Well, in doing my dissertation work, I interviewed some city planners. Now, I interviewed them in a city on the East Coast. The Mid-Atlantic region has a history of being part of the slave trade, the Mid-Atlantic slave trade.
Are you going to tell us where it was?
No, I'm not going to tell you where it is, because I promised that to my planners when I interviewed them, that I would not say where it was. So it's a deeply segregated city still. 2/3 of the population are African American, 1/3 white and other. And the majority of the planners at the time I interviewed them were white. Now, a couple of them, I asked like 3 or 4 questions, and they would go on and on and on. It was wonderful. I just listened. One of the things I heard over and over was that I'm aware that I'm a white planner. This is a community where I am not naturally part of. I did not grow up with them. I did not grow up in this neighborhood. I'm not native to the city. And so I've made a point of going there without any planning project in mind, not a community engagement. I just go and I listen to the community. I go to learn. I go with humility, but I go to learn. I go to get to know who they are. then they begin to wonder, who am I? And they start to ask me. So this is how well do we know those around us? As planners, we will invariably end up planning with a community that we are not naturally part of, whether it's because of age, whether it's because of ability, whether it's because of some other kind of socio-demographic thing. And we need to have, it really helps us to think about how we get to know that community. Earlier, Bruce did a presentation with Danya Ramori about conflict. And the question was, well, the scenario was people show up at these meetings, they've got 3 minutes, they've got a big gripe, and they've got something very important and personal and emotional to communicate. And there's this tension in the room. How do we get beyond that? The way you get beyond that is you start by anticipating that. You go to the community, you get to know them, and they get to know you, more importantly. They get to know you as a person that will listen, as a person that wants to know them, because if you truly want to know them, they'll know if you don't. But if you do want to get to know them, they'll also recognize that you're not just planning for them, you want to plan with them. So it's that mindset of getting to know each other.
So getting to know your community, we're all involved in a career path as planners that is very challenging every day. When Andrea says we've got to get to know our community, let me give you an example if I could. And I learnt from this experience. In an earlier life, I was a principal planner in Salt Lake City. And I was in charge of developing a master plan for the East Downtown area, which was the area between 2nd East and 7th East, South Temple to 13th South, thereabouts. And we were having a series of outreach meetings with the community. And this is how well you need to know the calendar, quite frankly. So we were meeting in the library of Salt Lake City's library, and we were upstairs, and we met from 5 till about 7 o'clock, thereabouts, reviewing this general plan for the East Downtown area. And everything was going very well. And we were getting towards the end of the meeting, about 6:30, and a lady came in the back and sat in the back, and she asked a few pertinent questions that were very relevant, and we all responded. And then we said, well, let's look at the calendar. We've looked at the scheduling on the building, the rooms that are available, etc. And let's look out to the future, because we need to have another meeting in about 2 or 3 weeks or a month out. So we picked a date. And the lady in the back who came in late said, you can't meet on that date. No, you can't meet on that date. That's Passover. We had scheduled a meeting on Passover. And she said, no, that's absolutely inappropriate. And my response was, I'm sorry, these buildings are in demand. We've scheduled the meeting already. It's been noticed. So we'll probably be going along. So I thought everything was fine. I got to work the next morning at 8:30 in Salt Lake City Hall, and I got a call from the mayor. At that time, it was Mayor Palmer Paulus. Does anyone remember him? Thank you, Michael. Bruce, you're summoned to the mayor's office. Oh, God, here we go. I've had a chat with the mayor, but not too much. So I go to the mayor, and right sitting next to the mayor is his chief of staff. And he's a Jewish gentleman. And said, Bruce, we've had a call from so-and-so this morning that you're scheduling meetings on Passover. Explain yourself, pretty much. That's what they said. And I said, well, Mayor, we've got a constraint on the building. Times are valuable. It's only certain times. We had to schedule it. And then Chief of Staff said, well, let me make a call to the rabbi. Oh, this is getting this is fun now. We're talking to the rabbi. So the rabbi gets on the phone. We're on a conference call. Bruce, explain to me what happened at the meeting and why you've got to have this meeting on Passover. So I explained to the rabbi of El Kameni synagogue about it all. And I said, but I read up on this a little bit while we were on the call. And I said, it's my understanding that Passover doesn't start till sundown. And I checked the calendar, and we're in daylight saving time. And so it's not going to be, we're going to be finished the meeting before the sun goes down. And the rabbi said, well, that's not exactly how it works. It's the last meeting at evening time, the meal at evening time. And there's Jewish people in here that probably know a lot more about this than I do. I'm just sort of paraphrasing. And he said, let me talk to my lady that comes to my synagogue. I'll chat to her about it. But I think you're okay. So we went ahead with the meeting, but that was a real learning experience for me about understanding the community, about scheduling important events that avoids these religious or other cultural holidays. And I don't think I've ever scheduled another meeting on Passover again.
Congratulations.
Well, I know.
I would say too that those community members have always been there. We've had a long-standing Jewish community in Salt Lake. I'm sure we've had Muslims for a long time in Salt Lake. They just haven't been as visible, and I'm sure it goes both ways. There may have been a sense of feeling exposed for someone who might have, it took a lot of courage for this woman to say, hey,
Yes.
wait a minute, you can't do that, because there's a high level of exposure there. We're at the point where we could be getting back to that as well. Like, when you represent who you are, wearing a headscarf is very exposing, because you get that. So
Let me finish my story.
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. The lady that came up and challenged me, and I had the meeting with the mayor and all that sort of thing, after a while, she came to other meetings, and we became very close friends. And I respected her because she did exactly what you're suggesting, stood up and exposed herself. And I valued that. And that was important, because then I got to know her more deeply than I ever did before. And I'd always check in with her to say, now, is there any holidays we've got coming up? But she turned out to be a wonderful lady, and we'd go to breakfast together sometimes and talk about planning matters in the East Downtown area and build a real rapport. I loved her. I really did. It was fun.
There are opportunities out there, yes.
Yeah.
Shoot. Next.
Any
Okay.
questions about that? And I'm sure everyone in this room has had similar experiences. Go ahead, please.
It was during spring break, and there were some people who were really, really upset and said that we planned it that way. I mean, how do you avoid or try and work around? There's so many different things to consider, and we want everyone to be able to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had the same thing with hunting season. Yeah, I can't come because I'm out at the camp, or whatever they call it, the deer camp, excuse me. So how do you avoid those things? I don't think we can avoid them all, but give reasonable opportunity for everyone to participate in some way. But Andre, you might have a really better suggestion than that.
Again, it's just knowing your community, getting familiar. You may have some community leaders that you can check in with before you start to schedule something, because you really can't know about everything. There's not always a calendar of it. Online searches help you with calendars, and there are conflicts. We have all these festivals, and we have the farmers market, and a million things to do, and so check with your community. Have community members or whatever your constituent that you're working with, kind of try to have people you check in on.
And I would say, be responsive to your citizenry.
Yeah.
When you get an email, I know this is a challenge for us, emails and phone calls respond the same day. People expect that, and don't delay. Get to know them so you have an open door policy to communicate. This lady right here, I just met her today. This is Karen, by the way. She's a recent graduate of Utah State, right? And she worked on the Garden City plan as part of her project. And so I got to know Karen because I've got a little insight on what she's doing. And by the way, Dean, she's thinking about doing graduate school, and I recommended the College of Architecture and Planning to her. But she seems like a wonderful addition to the program. But I got to know you, didn't we, Karen? And we had a chat. So if Karen would be in my community now, and she was involved in something, I think I'd go out of my, I know I would go out of my way to say, Karen, I think you need to be involved in this process, or in some way. Or because you're bringing an interesting insight about wetlands and drainage ways, right? So get to know our community. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, it's a great question though, and it's a challenge. We all there are many things to do, which makes a community wonderful, but at the same time, it makes it challenging. And we want to be inclusive. Inevitably, somebody's going to have a claim. I mean, we can't schedule around everybody's birthday and anniversary and things like this, but we just do the best we can.
You can't schedule around my birthday because I celebrate my birthday from 1 week, the birthday week, and then the following week. So my birthday covers 3 weeks. Does anyone else celebrate that way? I think it's fantastic. You get presents all the time. I'll go ahead. Okay, the American Planning Association is clear on bias and discrimination. It's to be avoided in every instance that comes up, in all its forms and all its varieties. So we as planners need to be very, very vigilant to avoid bias and discrimination of any type. Now, Andrea, I'll get you on the runway to this discussion. And we'll talk about the AICP principles, the code of principles that guide us. But we're having a conversation that I think we need to continue to have on diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's some people, we know who it is, the group, that are trying to shut that down. Yeah. But APA is still strong on diversity, equity, and inclusion, Andrea. And they're embraced in our code as well. So do we want to skip to the next slide? And I want to sort of walk you through.
Yeah, I do want to point out that in 2021, at the end of 2021, there was an update to the Code of Ethics and the Principles of Practice, and there were very strong statements about this. Now, they haven't been revised since, because it takes time to get this through. It's a national organization. It's got many, many layers. So they're sticking to it.
Sticking to it so far.
Sticking to it.
And I hope they continue. But bias, so we have a common understanding about what bias is. Although it's referenced in the Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct, it is not defined. Other terms are defined, like equity, discrimination, etc. But equity is not defined. And as the Professional Development Officer for the state, I think we've got to look elsewhere to find some definitions. So, Andre, bias, to favor something or a thing or a person in a way that's considered unfair. So you give preference to a group, an individual person, or something else, and it could be a development project, by the way, that you give bias towards. And then we see it in statistics, and we've all had these classes about avoiding bias in our data or something else.
It could be a community of people with tattoos.
It could be.
You know, the point being, and I'm just joking about that, but I mean, it could be that we assumed Shane. Shane's another person I've just made a connection with, gotten to know quite a bit, and you were telling me about how he's working in a community where they want to approve, a developer wants to get approved an apartment building. And the community is up in arms. Oh no, we can't have an apartment building here. They're going to bring crime. Kudos to Shane. He gets the research and he says, you know, apartment buildings are what, 2%? A crime rate of 2% per person, you know, the per capita thing. Single-family homes, did you say 7%? Yes, 7%. So he says, if there's crime around here, it's more of it's happening in your neighborhoods. And it was eventually approved, yes? Yes. So it helps to, sometimes it can help to have the facts. It's important to have the facts. There are going to be people who don't believe the facts, don't believe the actual data, but it's important that we start out knowing that so we can push back on that and say that, you know, that the data doesn't support that.
Very good. I want to introduce another participant in this group, and he's chatting away now here. This is Michael Hansen, and he's
Oh my goodness, you called him out.
he's a private consultant. So we're competitors, don't you think? In some ways. But I've had the privilege of working with Michael on a couple of projects, and the last one I think we did was Nephi, right? Something like that. Yeah. So this is Michael. He was formerly with the state of Utah. Did you know that? And now he's working as a private consultant with Jones and DeMille. Is that right? He's on my own now. Oh, he's on his own. Oh, my word. So now it's going to get more intense competition on the private side, but we look forward to that and maybe a relationship going forward. And this is also here, this lady right here is Katie Bussell. She works at Lehigh City. Did you know that? And Katie, tell us a little bit about your city, please, what you know about your city.
Like what?
Do you know any unique people in Lehigh?
We do have it's a very diverse city right now, I would say. We have like the east side up in Traverse Mountain is very, very wealthy right now, and then there's the more downtown and the west side, which is very much more working class, and so there's quite a bit of a cultural clash when we talk about apartments and ADUs and affordable housing. We get mixed signals every other way, and so it's a bit of a challenge right now.
So you understand these divisions in your community, and you're able to navigate those a little bit. Hopefully, and as you get more information, you'll be able to navigate them better, right? Good.
Yeah, and we've got a slide about that too, about how our values and our biases
Materialize themselves.
get extended into the built environment. So we'll talk about that. So what have we got here? We wanted to talk a little bit about bias, because that's what we're here for, is to talk about bias, and the different types of bias we have.
Andrea,
excuse me.
Michael's trying to fertilize the ground with Lehigh for the next contract. So let's not do that right now. You can do
There are
that.
these things in between called networking
I don't want him to get ahead on me.
Yes. So the different types of so I was completely unconscious of my bias about tattoos 30 plus years ago. It became conscious when I caught myself with that. It's very, very hard to become conscious of your unconscious bias, because by nature we are blind to it. It's a blind spot. That's another term for it.
Andrea, could you give us an example of an unconscious bias, please? Something we simply don't recognize that we have.
Well, I love the example of the I don't know if it wasn't this study of the planners, but it was a study about resumes. I bet you a lot of you heard about this just a few years ago, where resumes were sent out to job openings, and they had very anglicized names. John Smith, Mary Jones, very Anglo-centric names. And they got they measured the return callback rate, right? And then they put in what seemed to be overtly African-American names. Kaisha and, names that would, for a lot of Americans, appear to be distinctly African-American. They got a much lower return rate. Another one is the example of the zip code and the mortgage rates, or the assessment. It was the assessed value, where they were appraising homes. That's what it was. It was when you're buying a home, you get an appraisal to see if it's going to qualify for the mortgage and all that. And in certain zip codes, certain parts of the city, whether you're up in the foothills or whether you're down on the west side, the same home would appraise based on who the owner appeared to be.
Based on the name, right?
It was in the name, and yeah. So those are examples of those unconscious bias. I personally, after all the interviews I did on equity, and it wasn't exactly DEI. It was my dissertation research was on the talk walk gap. The APA has this wonderful, strong language about not being biased and not discriminating and not practicing with that embedded in our planning. But the outcomes say something very different. We look at the outcomes. Our cities, like Lehigh, are as segregated as they ever have been. The west side, on the other side of the track, on the other side of the river, on the other side of the highway. You look at West Salt Lake City, it's all still segregated despite what we say, and I call that a talk walk gap. And I was trying to understand that. And it's just embedded in the practice, and it's a very tough ship to turn around.
And it's embedded in our school districts, Andrea, as well. Let me give another example, if I could. My wife is an educator in the Granite School District, and she's not in the classroom any longer. She's in professional development and goes around to schools and teaches how to teach. And she's responsible for pre-K, K, and first grade. And so Granite School District goes from Mount Olympus to Magna, a long, skinny school district right across the valley. So it captures every socio-economic group within Salt Lake County. And so those parents who are on the east side are very much involved in their children's schooling, directly involved. They come to all the parent-teacher meetings, everything, and really advocate for their students or their kids. And on the west side, not so much, because very much Latino on the west side, and working 2 and 3 jobs out there to make ends meet. We talked about affordability this morning, and they've got to work to just afford rent. One of the little kids that she interviewed one day, and I'll always remember this was Juan. He's a cute little fellow. You look into his eyes and you think, oh, you're just a gem of a boy. Juan. And I got to know Juan because I'd come to the class sometimes and do little things with them and talk about planning or flying to Mexico or wherever. And I said to Juan one day, I said, Juan, it's going to be your birthday coming up on Sunday. What are you going to get for your birthday? And his little eyes lit up and got big, and he said, you know, Bruce, he said, I'm getting the best gift. Dad's getting out. And I thought, oh, this is one who lives with his grandparents. Both parents are incarcerated. He lives with his grandparents. And we think about bias and equity and inclusion. These poor little kids start from a position of disadvantage. And how do we lift them up? And that was heartbreaking for me when he said, Dad's getting out. I thought, oh my gosh, I mentioned to you, I had the best childhood, and here's one starting his career or his life with some sort of a disadvantage.
Talk about not knowing each other, right? How would you
Right.
know? How would you know that without having that conversation? I do want to mention that there are other names besides conscious and unconscious. So there's the explicit, and another way another is visible. Sometimes it's visible to us, as well as unconscious bias. It's the implicit. That's very often the hidden bias, the blind spots that we have. I also refer to it as a default setting because it's sort of that knee-jerk reaction we just don't even think twice about. That's our assumptions. further definitions of it.
You go ahead. I want to introduce Dave Peterson though, if I can.
So we kind of covered this because we were talking about Lehigh. Every city, we see the bias, and we don't recognize that as our bias. We didn't do that. It just happens. Well, I really encourage everyone to take a look at the planning process that you're involved in. Granted, it may have happened decades ago, or it may have been started decades ago. In fact, there is a fantastic study done just after COVID got started. I think they published about 2021, 2022, and they took the redlining maps. Everyone's familiar with the Hulk redlining maps? Okay. And they superimposed the highest risk area for COVID and the outcomes for COVID, the risk factors. It's almost a 1-for-1, and you know we had Hulk maps for Salt Lake City,
Yep.
and it's still the same thing. This started decades ago, but it is now our job to become aware of it and to try to find ways to not so much undo it, but unravel it, begin to level things out, to transition to something more equitable. What is the language that's going to work? I don't know, but it's our job to see it and do something about it and not ignore it and not just say, that's how it's always been, because it really hasn't. You know, before there was Salt Lake, there were other groups. You know, things evolve, and it doesn't always have to be that way. And it's easy to say, well, that's the way it is. What can we do about it? It's a lot, but we can do things incrementally. That's how planners do it, incrementally.
Let me introduce you quickly, Andrea, to David Peterson. David is the big wheel. He is essentially the mover and shaker of Farmington, right? Anything that happens in Farmington, David's had his hands in it, including the expansion of Lagoon, right, David? And he has. Please don't pass him in the hallway and not recognize him. Come up and get to know David a little bit better. He is a hero for me. He's got some issues he deals with on a regular basis to the best of his ability to enlift and inspire his family. So David is a great example. Thank you, David.
Thank you for the introduction. All right, oops. Wow. What happened
I told you not to
that
mess with my
text?
slides.
Wow. It looks like that now, but it didn't look like that when we weren't in presentation mode.
What should it say?
Well, it talks about the different areas where we can embed bias.
Overt
and
discrimination.
how we can embed bias.
Right. Overt discrimination, explicit discriminatory statements have become rare in planning, apparently. Rare, but let's keep them that way.
That's the overt stuff, the stuff that everybody notices.
Institutional bias, systematic barriers persist in hiring, promotion, and project assignments by the community level, right?
Right. So you know that overt discrimination and the institutional bias? So at the time Robert Moses was planning, I wonder how many people noticed that those bridges were too low for the buses. Now, if you took a bus and you wanted to get to the beach, you noticed. But if you had a car, you might never know that Robert Moses did that, made sure that those buses were too low for the bridges were too low for the buses to get to the beach. So that's the overt discrimination, but not visible to everybody.
Experiential disparities. Planners of color and different nationalities report more frequent discrimination than their white colleagues. Well, that's what your research showed, didn't it?
Yes, absolutely did. I interviewed city planners, but I also interviewed a lot of people at the National Planning Organization, the APA, and I had interviewed 5 current and past presidents of the APA. I interviewed the first African-American president, Many of you will know who he is, and those who were recognizable because of their prominence and their positions said, that's fine. You don't have to give me, you don't have to name me, people will know me, that's fine. But he was not listed. If anyone's familiar, you've logged on to APA for a while, there was this timeline. They were rolling out this new timeline. He was not on the timeline. You can't believe all the little trivial stuff that was on the timeline, but the first African American, which came 100 years after the APA, not the APA as the APA, but the first National Planning, the birth of planning in the United States, 1909, 2009, he's the first African American president of the APA. He's not on that timeline. The other person I interviewed, the first African American to get a PhD in planning in this country. He's not on the timeline, but you know who is? The first African American to get a master's, which to me suggests it looks like African Americans don't have any PhDs, they only have masters. So it's very, very subtle how these things happen. And when I called up the APA and I said, why aren't these people on the timeline? Oh, they're nominated. Nobody had nominated him. You know what he told me, this first person? His achievements go on and on and on. He said, I felt invisible. This person who is internationally known, he's internationally invited to speak, he felt invisible.
Thoughts, questions at all at this point? Or we continue on? Keep rolling on, Andre.
Okay.
So, this is the motto for APA, the national organization, creating great communities for all. Creating great communities for all, and I would underline the all part, italicize it, bold it, whatever you want to do, but for all. For all in our community. Now that is an interesting challenge with profound implications of how we define our own community in the first instance, and then how we embrace them so we recognize everyone in our community in an equal and in an equal way. Their needs. How do we address their needs?
And it goes back to that point that we started with, which is to get to know your community. Because how do you know you've included all if you don't know your community? So go to the foothill. Instead of going just up to the foothills, go down to the lowlands. Cross the train tracks.
But I'm wondering if we have a fundamental weakness in our planning processes to touch everyone's life in some way. Do we have the capacity to do that?
You know,
we have public hearings, we offer a general plan up, the city council approves it, and we move on. I just wonder if we have some significant, severe deficiencies in that procedure.
Right. Well, one of the theories I developed in my research is that we plan for ourselves. Because we know ourselves, we know our community, we plan for ourselves, our communities, our families. Well, today, close to 90% of planners are white, whether you're female. There's almost equal parity between male and female, which is great for women, but it's still close to 90% white. And as our country and our states and our cities are becoming more diverse, planners are actually becoming less diverse in relation to those they represent and serve. We're public servants, most of us, and even when we're working as private consultants, we work often for a public entity, and we're servants of the public. Well, that public is changing. Planners are changing in the opposite direction, unfortunately, in relation to those we serve.
Right, so let's continue the dialogue to get to know one another. This gentleman right here, stand up, sir. This is Arnab Chakraborty, and did I say that correctly?
Yes.
And he is the Dean of the College of Architecture and Planning at the University of Utah. Tell us a couple of little things about you that make you unique, please, Dean.
Sure. I'm I'm a father. I have a daughter who's 12, sixth grader, a husband, brother, son, friend, and I am also the dean of the College of Architecture and Planning for the last couple of years. I actually met Bruce for the first time
A week ago.
past Thursday when he was there to receive his PhD. And I've actually known Andrea for about 5 years. Prior to moving to Utah, I was at the University of Illinois and was a co-editor on a book where she submitted a chapter that she was the lead author on, I believe, with Reed Ewing and maybe one other individual.
Yeah, the smart growth one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the college I am currently leading has 4 departments. Planning is one of them, and I suspect there might be some graduates of the Department of City and Metropolitan Planning here. Thank you. It's really a great community. We also have the School of Architecture, the Division of Design, Multidisciplinary Design, and we have a new addition to the college this year called the Division of Games. So overall, we have about 2,000 students, roughly, give or take. So it's been a great fun. I'm still learning. I'm actually a planner by background. My work's in regional governance and land use, and this is my first APA Utah conference. So thank you for having me here.
Yay.
Welcome. And
Thank
see,
you.
We get to know one another a little bit better. And wonderful talent we have to tap into in this organization, but also in the Dean's community, and do that sort of thing. Now, this other gentleman I want to call on, this one that looks like Santa.
No one is safe.
No one is safe. Do you know Brian Carver? He's a resident of Logan. He's probably worked with some of you as the planning guy for the Bear River Association of Governments. Is that true, Brian? Now tell us why aren't you doing that now? Because I see something different on your tag.
My name tag's changed. Yes, I did. I worked for the regional planning organization here in Utah for quite some time, for 18 years. But last fall, I left that behind and took an opportunity to work in the private sector with JUB Engineers. I'm now their lead planner here in the state of Utah, only planner in the state of Utah. But excited to grow opportunities for the group and services in the state. But yeah, I'm born and raised in Utah. Went to school up at, I grew up down in the Salt Lake area, but came to school up here at Utah State University, and then
Loved the cold weather and
couldn't leave the cold weather. I did go back down to Salt Lake for a couple of years after graduating, but it was too hot down there, so I came back up here as soon as I could, and I've been here ever since.
Brian, but I got to tell you, I'm not too sure about these guys with beards. I don't know if you'd come to a public
There
hearing.
you go. There's
There's another one.
there's bias. Yeah.
Yeah, bias.
The beard. Sure.
Actually, facial hair, people are subconsciously biased towards giving men with facial hair more credibility.
Really?
Yes.
That's got to be a new thing.
This only believed by people who have facial hair, right? That is only agreed by those guys.
Only
So-
the people with facial hair are nodding. Yes.
So don't discriminate on Brian or this gentleman over here or anyone else who has facial hair, please. They are good people underneath that, right? And the reason you have it is to keep yourself warm or distinguished.
You know, originally I grew it to make myself look older. Because
Really?
coming out of college, I looked like I was 18 years old. So I grew the beard to appear
Yeah.
Older?
a little older, and it just kind of stuck.
Did it work?
I think so. So people stopped asking if I was my wife's son.
Ouch.
So
I have good news or bad news depending on how you want to look at it. We're not going to get through all our
Keep going.
slides.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So,
my fault.
all right. Here you go. This is for you. This one's for you, dear.
Excuse me. This is the principle right out of the AICP Code of Ethics. Now, if you think it's just applicable to AICP members, you are wrong. It is applicable to all planners and all persons involved in a planning procedure or process. So this is important. People who participate in the planning process shall continuously pursue and faithfully serve the public interest. Now, we could have a whole session on defining what the public interest is, so we're not going to go down that road today. But it requires us to examine our own culture, practices, values, and professional positions to reveal and understand our conscious and unconscious biases and privileges. And by the way, we're all privileged to be here today, and we're privileged in our life as an essential first step. So understand our own bias, both the obvious, the conscious and unconscious, so we can better serve and truly inclusive public interest, promoting a sense of belonging for all people in our community. So I've added the last few words, but I think that's the implication. Remember that simply as we go forward, that this is one of the principles of the Code of Ethics, applicable to everyone in this room.
Right. So this went through a long vetting process, this language. They were very, very careful with it. And it wasn't decided or agreed to on a whim. This took a long time to go through this and say, yes, this is what the National Planning, the American Planning Association stands by and stands for. And not everyone is a member of APA. There are lots and lots of planners all around the country and around the world that are not part of APA. But the APA is held at a very high standard, even internationally. We actually do have quite a few members internationally of the APA.
The largest professional planning organization in the world.
In the world, absolutely.
Yep.
Yep. There's a second part to that.
Oh, be conscious of the rights of others. Develop skills that enable better communication and more effective, respectful, and compassionate planning. Effective, respectful, and compassionate planning in our communities, especially the underrepresented members and the marginalized people of our communities, so that they may be fully participants in the planning process. And respect their experience, knowledge, and history. We can learn so much from the cultures and the ethnicities and races within our communities. I had a wonderful experience to do some planning on behalf of Cedar City. And I never knew this until I went to Cedar City, but there is a reservation of the Paiute Indian tribe embedded within the boundaries of Cedar City. It was a great experience for me to have those indigenous people share with me their ethic about planning. And it's different than ours. But it was wonderful to engage with them and learn from them. And I learned so much about empathy and respect for our elders and respect for the land.
Yeah. Those opportunities are out there for us all over. Everywhere we are as planners, those opportunities are there.
This is the results of a survey that APA conducted. Now, we know our primary obligation is to serve the public interest. But equally on that scale, planners responded to say promoting fairness and rejecting discrimination were equally as important to us as a profession, as a discipline, and as we express and expose ourselves to the community. Serve the public interest, but do so in a way that promotes fairness and avoids discrimination, Andre.
5 out of 6 said yes. Yep.
Let me just go back to my experience, though, with the Paiute tribe of Utah. Before I immigrated, I had the opportunity to work with some Aboriginal communities. And the Australian population, the white Caucasian population of Australia, has been there approximately 200 years. The Aboriginal population has been there over 100,000 years. 100,000. It's like the Native American, by the way. The Australian Aboriginal population, you cannot see where they have been or occupied for the land for 100,000 years. As opposed to me and my colleagues and friends in the Caucasian white population, we've crapped it up, quite frankly, in 200 years. So a completely different ethic, and if you communicate with them, they'll share their ethic with you. Sorry.
You know, this idea of having a presence without visibly having a presence. I'm going to go through a little bragging rights of my own. So there's a professor at the University of Utah. I think he's a sociologist, and he's written a book about the Nahuatl, the Aztec community that was in Utah and has been there in existence for over 10,000 years, right? So there were trade coming all the way up from Mexico, what is now Mexico, right? So part of North America, Mexico is part of North America, and down from Central America on up. And he has found evidence of the presence of the Nahuatl, which is on my mother's side, that's my heritage. So when I got to Utah 12, 13 years ago, I went, oh, wow, this feels like home. I couldn't put my finger on it. I like to think it's because my people were here too. They've been here for thousands and thousands of years. And so these are the kind of invisible things that are around us, this presence. And in the same way, we all have our stories, we all have our legacies and our heritage that matter. They all matter. It's just getting to know them. Okay, you've got something to say about this.
Oh, I don't have a lot to say about this in the interest of time, but you can read it just as easily as I do. And I think APA is going to put this online anyhow, so you
Yes.
can come back and look at this material. But
Yeah.
this is how we introduce bias into our planning process, by zoning and participation, and then how we interpret the data or give it some sort of level of bias to achieve a preordained or predestined goal for ourselves, and to validate the assumptions of policy or what we believe the City Council or Planning Commission want to hear. Be forthright, stand up and share it exactly as it's provided.
Okay. Collective bias. This is also sometimes, I would argue, is culture, where we have this hidden, unconscious bias that we all kind of share, and that's part of why it remains often unconscious to us or invisible to us, right? So in planning, the idea to overcome that is to acknowledge. We talked about how the nice foothills, the upper levels of the Wasatch have these lovely homes, and air is clean and clear, and then you've got the valley on the west side. To recognize that. Start by recognizing that. Start by, there isn't a need to feel shame, and if anyone wants to shame you because it exists, I would argue that that's probably more their problem. It should not, I don't like to use the word should, but it really, I encourage you not to let that prevent you from calling something out as existing. Whether you name it or not, it's still there.
Now, Katie, in Lehigh and Farmington and all the communities that are represented here, we have soft voices, what I call soft voices. We have loud voices that come to meetings and represent themselves. But there's a community within our communities that are softly spoken and don't speak to advance their self-interest very often. They're just softly spoken. They're the ones that we need to be listening to. Seek them out, listen to what they've got to say, because they will speak softly to you and in a non-confrontational way often, and just say, Katie, we need a park, or our children are risking getting to school because of traffic, whatever it may be. But just simply listen to those soft, what I call the soft voices of our community.
Yeah, thank you. So these, as Bruce said, these will all be posted online. But there are ways that we, not always, most often, that's what my conclusion after interviewing several dozen planners is planners are not overtly racist. There's no intention behind the segregation today. When we had redlining, I can't speak to that. I wasn't alive. I wasn't planning at that time in the 20s and the 30s. I'm sure there were some that knew exactly what the outcome was going to be, and others who just couldn't see it and couldn't recognize that this was going to be an outcome. But we're here today, and we have the opportunity. The data does tell us what we've got on the ground, and so we can acknowledge this and recognize it as something we do not have to always. We don't have to go along. We don't have to go along with this, and but that is how this collective bias is perpetuated.
And
we
we've
go
harped
along.
and we've harped on quite a bit today about getting to know your community. I don't believe a planner's work time is 8 to 5 any longer. 8 to 5 is not. Go to the Cinco de Mayo festival or the celebration. Get to know those people are there. Go to the other celebrations that bring community together.
Juneteenth. Juneteenth. There's time to go to Juneteenth.
Exactly. Come to Australia Day. It's a wonderful event.
Here in Salt Lake?
Sparsely
In Utah?
populated. Sparsely populated, but sometimes we fly the flag. So if you see a flag up at a home, come and introduce yourself. And so these celebrations we build in community, there's the opportunity for the planners to get out of your office and go to those events and get to know your community. Get to know your community. Katie, go to Steel Days and get to know American Fork, or go to whatever celebration we have and just mingle, or put up a little booth about the plan or something, and get to know face-to-face the people in your community that you will build a relationship with. I think that's so important.
Yeah, take planning to the community,
Yep.
absolutely. This is
No,
more of that
this
survey.
is a-
Okay, more of the survey.
Move on.
Okay, so we do want to talk a little bit. I wanted to talk a little bit about training programs. There's some really dark data coming out about this, because what they're finding is that sometimes these backfire, this bias training. It can be done very, very well, but it can also backfire. And so we have to be really careful about the kind of training we're doing, because there are reactions that people have feeling shamed or feeling wrong. We all have biases. I mean, I was very upfront. I share my biases. I've got plenty more. But so the bias training can be very good, but it can also have a dark side to it. I just want to mention that, because that is part of how we move forward, becoming more aware, but that's a kind of a cautionary tale.
Now, equity assessment tools, think about what we measure and how we measure it. I'm an advocate for plans that are measurable and actionable. They've got to deliver, right? So on the equity side, how do we measure our response to equity? And that's embedded in our code of ethics as well. And I think that's a challenge we've got to come up with about how we measure our response to inclusivity and equity and building diversity into our plans, Andrea.
Yeah.
I think we've just got to come up with that and analyze that, but do it in a way that people feel valued and not used.
Yes, yes. And if anyone was here for the very beginning of the conference for the asset-based community development, that data will always be there. That data can identify your problems, your deficits. Get to the data after you've identified your assets, because every community, no matter how under-resourced they are, no matter how neglected they've been or underrepresented, they have assets, all kinds of assets. Do that and then compare it to the data, and it'll look like two different places, two different communities that you're planning for. Because when you start with the assets, you realize there's a lot of richness. And then you go to the data and says, oh, the data missed all of these assets.
And in a lot of ways, we saw that today during the lunchtime. that Courtney Flint
Yeah.
from USA on our the wellness surveys across the state start to mine some of that data to evaluate how we're doing with our inclusion and understanding our communities. You know, she had some great, a wealth of information that you've just got to pass out a little bit and find out what's applicable to you that you can work on.
Definitely, more than
Sorry.
one way to measure something. And then engagement. Again, you know, that asset mapping, that's a great engagement tool. There are all kinds of ways to engage the community. And we've been talking about that. Let's do this.
We're okay with this. You can skip on.
Okay.
I'm looking at the time right now. I don't want
Yeah.
to shorten you up for your commute to the American Heritage Center. But just the parting shot I would have is that we need to be, we need to get out of office and speak to people directly. Don't wait for them to come to us about a development application or a general plan policy or something. I think we've got to take the opportunity, even though the mayor or the city council may say to you, where are you? You're not in the office. Well, I'm out sitting at a park chatting with the mothers and the kids about what we need to do to improve the safety in this neighborhood. Or I'm out riding the bus and finding out how difficult it is to get across our community to validate some of the comments I'm hearing. Or I'm hiking in the trail and what we could do to enhance that opportunity and that amenity for our citizens, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Your planning director may underestimate the value of hiking a trail or going to a park or going to a laundromat. Your planning director might need to be informed of the value of that. Do that. Stand up for the opportunity to use your time to get to know your community. This is really the only way we overcome our biases.
And when you stop on the trail, take your laptop under the tree at lunchtime and send him a couple of emails so he knows where you are and what you do. I'm working on a development application, by the way. So, Andre, did you have anything else to add?
I want to thank you all. This is one of the toughest sessions in the day, besides maybe first thing in the morning. But the last one in the afternoon is a tough one to sit through. I thank you all for letting Bruce go up to you and introduce you to all of us. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. And
I hope we've got to know one another as a community of planners, know one another a little bit better, and we need to take the effort to get to know one another further. But it's our privilege to be with you. Thank you for all you do, truly, for everything you do. And I know we're all learning at the same time, but continue on that learning path, and I know you'll be successful. You truly will be. Maybe as successful as Dave Peterson and Mike Hansen back there and others in our midst, and get to know one another, and Michael as well, excuse me, and the Dean as well. So congratulations, everyone. Stay at it, keep at it, and take away just one or two things from this conference that you can apply when you get back home. But thank you. Please have an enjoyable dinner tonight together. Thank you.